Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tonka Talk, where we talk about community and connection. And each Friday, I share my personal story of growing up in Scientology, leaving, and how I found true community after that, and the community that I live and work in today. I'm Natalie Webster, and this is Tonka Talk. This is part 4 of my story. Today, though, I have a special treat for you. My sister, Lana, who you've heard me talk about in the last... Well, we're on part 4, so in the last 3 parts, I probably mentioned Lana each time. Welcome, Lana.
Hi, everybody.
And the cool thing is, this is actually Lana's first time publicly saying anything about Scientology, her time in the Sea organization, right?
Yeah.
You've not talked about it at all.
Nope.
Yeah. So here we go. I'm going to wrap up a little bit, or actually I'm going to kind of remind you where we left off. Where we left off in part 3, we talked about how our grandpa became our dad. And where I left off on the part where I ended up being sent away. And this was in 1983. So I had just turned 13. We were living in Waipahu, right? Mm-hmm. And my big sin, the thing that I did at 13 that got me banished for 3 months by our grandpa dad, was that I kissed a boy. Mm-hmm. It was at remember that park in Waipahu where it had the baseball field and there was a pool there?
It was Waipahu Rec Center.
Yes. So I was there at the time. I had a kind of boyfriend, Joseph Rivera. I even remember his name, which is crazy. We were 13, and we were in the dugout at the baseball field, and this was my first kiss ever. And we had a little makeout session, and the crazy thing is, I didn't even enjoy it. I thought kissing was kind of gross.
Mm-hmm. I believe you.
Yeah. And I remember I was kind of spitting on the way home because I thought it was kind of gross that he put his tongue in my mouth and it seemed very not hygienic. This was at 13 and my first kiss, not the most, magical experience. I don't know if anybody's first time, I don't know, maybe it is. I don't
Mine
know.
wasn't.
Not memorable either.
Nope.
So I kissed this boy. I head home. I'm kind of excited about it because it was my first kiss and I was 13 and I shared it with our cousin who would come from California and stay with us sometimes. And for a while she was living there as well. And she was a year older than me. And I shared with her what happened and she ratted on me. Mm-hmm. She told our grandpa, my grandpa dad, because by then our mom had already married him. Mm-hmm. And he flipped out. And the result of that was me pretty quickly being sent to Washington State, to Moses Lake, Washington State, mm-hmm. which is, it felt like it was in the middle of nowhere, to go live with our mom's sister and our cousins, Cindy and Julie, who were just a week younger than me. They're twins. Mm-hmm. And that was the deal. And at the time, it was this attitude I was being told of. I needed to see how other people lived. It was this vibe, the way I recall it, that I was just ungrateful. And, I broke this rule. We weren't supposed to have boyfriends. Do you remember being told anything about it when I was sent away?
Just that you kissed a boy and that you were banished to go live with our cousins in Washington State. And there was no set time that you would be back.
Yeah, this was not a round trip ticket. Mm-hmm. And it was in the dead of winter. And remember, we grew up in Hawaii. So we were on the island of Oahu. I had left only one time, which is when we left. It was probably like the year before when we went to California, which was the first time I'd ever been off island out of Hawaii. And that's when our mom and grandpa went off to Vegas while we were in California and got married. Mm-hmm. So we're back from that. They're married. And then I kiss this boy. I get sent off. It's the fall of, what was it, like 83, 84. I was 13, so it had to have been the fall of 83. I spent 3 months in Washington living with my cousins and my aunt. And pretty much had to kind of beg my way back. I remember asking Mom a few times, like, when do I get to come home? At first, it was kind of cool because I thought, oh, I get to go see snow and experience the mainland, something I'd never done. You know me, I'm always looking for the silver lining.
Yep, the traveler too.
Yeah, so I was going to be able to travel. And it was a real eye opener because I'd never gone to school on the mainland. It was where I learned to speak proper English using good grammar, because in Hawaii, we grew up speaking what's called pidgin English. And I didn't even realize that I didn't speak proper English. So I did learn that there in Washington. 3 months go by. By then, it's January 1984. I finally am allowed back and pretty much understand that if I want to stay in the household, I need to. It's not unusual for a family to say, you know what, you need our house, our rules. My pushback is not against that. It was more like if we didn't, like kiss butt basically, and not have a voice and not question him, then there wouldn't be an issue.
Right.
And there were issues because he had a beef with the Church of Scientology in Hawaii. And so he would get upset when we would go there. I remember you getting in trouble once for going to the church in Hawaii and wanting to do one of the services. Maybe it was the Purification Rundown. I remember this causing this big problem. But we're just trying to I'm back. I'm trying to lay low. I'm still 13 at that point, and I was feeling a little resentful when I got back. Like, oh wow, I did get to see how other people live, and it was not like how we lived. That was, it was 1983, not 1920. Kissing a boy at 13 is something very normal to do. And it was made into this dirty, horrible thing, which I find really interesting, given that our current stepdad, grandpa dad, was sleeping with our mom, that got married his son's wife, left his wife of many, many, many years and decades to marry our mom. And I'm like, seriously? Like, you going to call me out for kissing a boy at 13 as a single 13-year-old, kissing another single 13-year-old? No scandal at all. After everything that just went down in our family?
Yeah, very hypocritical.
Yeah, completely. So I come back, and do you remember, Lana, if you were hanging out at the church in Hawaii anymore, or were you kind of just home doing your thing?
While you were gone?
While I was gone, or when I got back.
I was basically floating around playing with our cousin Burgundy and being a kid, because part of it was summertime, I thought. Yeah,
and you were 11 at this time.
Yeah, and it was, I just started working at the trophy shop. And so I just kept busy doing that, playing with our other cousin and trying to stay out of trouble, staying quiet, staying obedient, having a good work ethic.
Yeah, which is nothing wrong with having a good work ethic. And I will say we did develop a good work ethic.
We did.
But could have been done in a little bit of a different way. So we move forward here, and I'm back in Hawaii, and I start hanging out I make a new friend who's the son of the executive director of the Church of Scientology in Hawaii, and his name was Bruce, and he was my age. We hit it off. We hung out. We were really, really good friends. In fact, my mom would let him sleep over at our house, and we would all hang out. It was completely platonic. And he was recruited. He ended up joining staff in Hawaii, and he was 15 then. He might have started when he was earlier. Do you recall?
No.
I don't remember when he started, but it was somewhere between 13 and 15. But at 15, I remember he was recruited for the Sea Organization. Now, if you don't know, the Sea Organization is Scientology's, I would call it their paramilitary branch.
Yeah, management for global organizations.
middle management, and international management. You sign a billion-year contract because you're dedicating not just this lifetime, but in Scientology, they believe in multiple lifetimes, but that you're going to come back lifetime after lifetime to serve these billion years, to serve Scientology. Now, so because Bruce was a staff member there in Hawaii, you were not allowed to leave to go to the Sea Organization if you had a current contract there. Staff members sign 2.5 and 5 year contracts, which is an interesting point because they're considered volunteers, which is how the church gets around not paying them. Yet you can't leave. Not like any other volunteering that I have run into since then. So Bruce wants to go to California to join the Sea Organization, but he has to replace himself first. So he recruits me to take his job in Hawaii so he can go on to California and join the Sea Organization. So by this time I'm 15 and it was my sophomore year in high school, and the plan was for me to drop out and join staff, be working at the Church of Scientology in Hawaii. My mom was fully on board because joining staff or joining the Sea Organization was just like, I don't know, becoming a doctor in some families or joining the priesthood, right?
Yeah. She would be very proud of us.
Yes. So at that time, and I'm thinking, oh, I get to drop out of school? Which honestly, I think was one of the biggest reasons why I did it.
That's one of the big reasons why I joined the Sea Org is because I didn't, I was going to flunk out of 9th grade. And
because you missed so many days.
Because I missed so many days goofing off. And it was one way out.
Yeah. And this is a theme that you will hear in, I think, both of our stories is always trying to find a way out of a situation. And we'll talk more about some of the rules in the Sea Organization and Scientology that in the end we ended up using against them to get out. So I drop out of high school. I join staff in Hawaii. Bruce goes off to California to join the Sea Organization. I, not long after, get sent to California to do training for my job in Hawaii. And again, I thought, well, I mean, I'm 15, but, I'd already gotten sent off before, but I was living with family. So at this point, I'm like, well, this'll, you stay in a dorm. I thought it would be kind of like going off to college.
You wish.
I know. Which, if you know anything about Scientology and the Sea Organization, it is nothing like that. Think more prison or prison camp.
Yeah.
Right? What did you say?
Yeah, definitely.
So I go to California. I'm 15 years old to start this training to be able to be a staff member in Hawaii. And I remember the first time when I arrived and was taken up to the dorm, the way that Sea Organization, and I'm going to call it Sea Org for short because it's just easier, but the Sea Org is the Sea Organization, which again is the paramilitary branch of Scientology, where you sign a billion-year contract. Not unusual, too, as a young teen or even child to do this. So they take me up to where I'm going to be staying and point out my bunk, and I'm mortified. I walk into this room. There's rows and rows of bunk beds, 3 beds high. It looked like what you see on television with jails. They were small, right? They weren't twin beds. Weren't they smaller than that? Do you recall?
I think they were twin beds. Twin extra long beds, technically, but more cot-like.
Yeah, they were really thin mattresses.
Yeah.
And so my bunk was to be the top bunk. Now I'm 15 years old. The only time I'd really left home was when I got sent to Washington, but even then I was staying with family. I remember that night just bawling in that bed because it was so gross. I don't think there were even sheets. It was the building that we lived in, worked in, studied in, used to be a hospital. And if you go to Hollywood in LA and you look for these big blue Scientology buildings, that's where we were. That's where I was. In fact, the main road they renamed off of Sunset is now called L. Ron Hubbard Way. So I'm thinking, okay, this is horrific, the living conditions, but I'm going to try to make the most of it. If nothing else, we know how to survive under unusual and difficult circumstances. So I start my training. I'm going at it. In the meantime, you're back home.
Yep.
At this time, you're almost 14. You're not even 14. It's getting towards the end of the school year, and you drop out of school.
Yep.
Which you weren't even legally, that was the whole thing. When I dropped out, I was 15, but I would have turned 16 by my junior year of high school. So they felt like, well, that was fine.
You mean which meant that you could just drop out at 16?
Yep. You could legally drop out of school in Hawaii, at least then, at 16. And I dropped out at 15, but I would have turned 16 before the next school year. So I'm in California studying. You're back home in Hawaii. You're 14. Tell me about how you got recruited for the Sea Organization.
Well, a Sea Org member came to the Hawaii org, and he was recruiting for CMU, Central Marketing Unit. And I was there, and I would say I got coerced into signing the billion-year contract. They play it up. They don't say, oh, your bunk bed's going to be the highest. It's going to smell like bed bugs, and you're not going to have any sheets and blankets until you figure it out. They don't tell you that up front.
No, they make it sound almost like you're going to go to summer camp.
Yep, summer camp. I would have a guardian.
Your guardian was to be your recruiter, right?
Correct.
And your recruiter was a man named Jonathan Glassford.
Yes.
Who I think now, he escaped the Sea Organization eventually, and I think he went to Canada, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Long story short, he never showed up. I went to LA.
Yeah, remember, she's 14 years old.
Yeah, he never showed up. I believe he blew.
And to blow in Scientology means to depart and leave without authorization, which a lot of the times is about the only way that you can leave.
Right.
They don't really sign off on people leaving that often. So you're 14, you get recruited by Jonathan. He tells the family that he's going to be your legal guardian, make sure that you're in school, keep an eye on you, because again, you're only 14.
Yep.
You get to California, you never see the man.
No, I never see the man. I was introduced to the Sea Org by getting to the birthing building in the middle of the night, and it was dark. There was no reception. Everyone was sleeping, and I was told, take your bag and go find this lady who is going to be your, she's going to take care of you while you're in the EPF.
And the EPF is the Estates Project Force. Think boot camp for Sea Org members. It's training that we go through where you spend, how many hours a day for studying?
5, I think.
5 hours or so. You study Sea Org courses to become a Sea Org member. And the rest of the time you're doing physical labor.
Correct.
So you're 14, you're not in school. You arrive at this, again, 3 bunk beds high and all that. And you're starting the Estates Project Force to become a Sea Organization member.
Yep. And so I arrive. There were no signs or anything in the building. It was a shanty kind of a building. The stairs inside were cement and crumbling, and when I did find the lady and she brought me to my dorm, same thing. There was no sheets or blankets. The bed was really gross. And we could not use the bathroom or the shower.
Because it didn't work?
They worked. I don't know if it was because they didn't want to pay for it or, I have no idea.
You mean you were told you could not use the bathroom or the shower in the room?
Correct.
And you have to kind of picture these rooms with these bunk beds 3 high. These are not large rooms. And I would say, I know my first dorm probably had 15 women in it. And there was one bathroom. So most of us went to another building to shower or even use the bathroom because otherwise you're waiting for 15 women. I think there were 15 to 17. And they're all one next to the other, these bunks. There's no like living room. There's no kitchen. You eat in a cafeteria.
Yep.
So you get sent to then, are you staying then with the other people who were in the boot camp?
Yep. Staying with them at this point, and the next morning, LA, the smog settles and it stinks, in the mornings, and it was cold, and I was coming from Hawaii, so I didn't really have proper winter gear for the mornings. But, there's blood on the sidewalk from, the night before's mugging or killing or who knows, because it was right in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right off of Hollywood Boulevard.
In the 80s.
Yeah. And, just with a bunch of tired, disheveled people trying to make it through the EPF.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that happened, and I think this would have been, would you say, one thing that happened in 1986, and a lot of what we're talking about right now happened around 1986. L. Ron Hubbard died in January of 1986. And there was this really big event where it was like mandatory. Well, all the events were mandatory for all Scientologists to attend, and it was announced. And that is when David Miscavige took over the Church of Scientology. And at that time, I feel like too, because L. Ron Hubbard died, there was almost more of this fever pitch to contribute and become dedicated and dedicate your life to Scientology. That was also when that album came out. Scientology, the church put out an album called The Road to Freedom, which I think you can look up on the internet, and you should just prepare to it's so cringe.
Yeah, it is cringe.
It's cringe, but I gotta say, sometimes the songs get stuck in my head, and it's not a completely negative feeling. I think because when there were times when, we managed to create joy where we could, find fun where we could, try to make friends. This Road to Freedom album comes out in 1986, and L. Ron Hubbard wrote all of the songs.
They're so lame.
You gotta hear it. It was like, get on the road to freedom.
Yeah.
Help us save all mankind.
You know the words.
Yes. Now, if you are an ex-Scientologist and you're hearing this and it's triggering, I'm very sorry. On this album was John Travolta. He sang on the album. Chick Corea, Leif Garrett, Frank Stallone, and Karen Black.
Yep.
I don't know if there were other people, but I remember those ones specifically. It was L. Ron Hubbard and Friends, The Road to Freedom. And this album was played all the time.
Yep, constantly.
Constantly, which is probably why it's still stuck in our head.
Yeah, we had some fun in the cult. We have some good memories.
Yeah, it's something where I kind of liken it to, when you go to some countries where they don't have a lot. You've traveled a lot, and you've been to the Dominican Republic. You've been to where you see these kids who don't have hardly anything, but they're laughing.
Yeah, they're having fun, making their own fun.
They're making their own fun with the circumstances, with what they have to work with. And I think it's also a way of coping and dealing with what's going on, especially when you're a kid. And being children in Scientology, you're not seen as children. You are spiritual beings with small bodies.
Yep.
So that's why, like Lana was working at 11 and working were you working part-time or you doing full-time summers?
Full-time. I was, even during school, I was earning, I think, $1 an hour, and I got paid $40 quite consistently.
Yeah. For working full-time.
Yeah. That's why I dropped out of school.
What, to make the $40?
Because working was more important than school.
That's very true. That was kind of a theme in our family as well. our mom, even before she got into Scientology, and when I was 5 and you were 3, she married a Scientologist, and I talk about that in an earlier episode. There is this mentality of being one of the worst things you could do, I would say, as a child in Scientology, in a Scientology family, is be a distraction.
Yes.
Right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
That was one of the worst things that you could do or be. So if you were working, we worked in the family business, which is how they got away paying $1 an hour. And, you were 11, not even working age. And I think there were rules. If it was a family business, then child labor laws didn't fully apply. Plus, it was the 80s. It was in Hawaii. I don't know that anyone was really checking. But early on, we were indoctrinated to believe that our contribution, regardless of age, as children, being able to work and contribute was far more important than school and studies and learning, short of studying Scientology. So there wasn't value put on education, which is why, and how you were allowed to, pretty much unchecked go through your freshman year and end up pretty much failing because you
never went.
You never went. So it's that you got to kind of understand that mentality, but we're still kids. We still wanted to have fun and laugh and find some joy. Again, just like children in other parts of the world who seem to have nothing, and yet there they are laughing. And remember that time you went to the Dominican Republic? Can we tell the eyebrow story? Your eyebrow.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
Was that the Dominican Republic?
Yes.
So Lana, in her adult life post Scientology, has done quite a bit of traveling, and you were in the Dominican Republic you were volunteering.
Yep. I was on a mission, and we were rebuilding some houses, some shanty homes, and
this is post Scientology. After Lana left Scientology and the cult long before our family did, but she did it very quietly. She was very careful about anything she ever said to us because she knew it could lead to us cutting ties with her and disconnecting. But you still, you got involved in other groups and organizations and did good in the world. So you're there volunteering, and almost everyone in our family, including our dad, our eyebrows just come out.
Yeah, alopecia.
So our grandma had tattooed eyebrows. Both Lana and I have tattooed our eyebrows. But before you tattooed the eyebrows, go ahead and share what happened.
So I'm basically bald in the eyebrow sections, and I went to the Dominican Republic on a missions trip, and the children there, although extremely poor, they laughed and sang songs and wanted to be with us and explore these Americans that were, coming in to help them. And although I didn't speak their language and they didn't speak English, this 12-year-old girl points at her eyebrows and looks at me and says, "No, no." And I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, I don't have any eyebrows. It must be really interesting to look at a person with no eyebrows.
It is. It's an odd look.
Yeah, it's an odd look.
But they were laughing and making fun of this. And
they were laughing.
I thought that was so funny because they were laughing in a way when you told the story earlier that it wasn't in a mean-spirited way.
Yeah, no, it was just a curious.
Exactly. They were curious and they found it so funny.
Yeah, they did.
I thought that was so funny. But that's an example of, I think when you're kids, regardless of what's going on around you, there's still this desire to play. You want to play. I mean, even as an adult, some of the more happy adults I know are the ones that still play. They get out there and make a snowman if they want. They dance if they want. They're just things that you would relate to more with maybe children doing. But you can't take it too far, because if we did some of the things kids did, we'd be locked up.
Oh, yeah.
So you're in boot camp for the Sea Organization, the Estates Project Force, where you study Sea Org member training for 5 hours a day, and you're doing manual labor the rest of the time. What was that like?
It was very intense, very strict. You weren't allowed to listen to music or have any kind of fun whatsoever. I had beautiful feet when I went into the Sea Org. I had an arch, just gorgeous feet. And I didn't have shoes that would support my feet with all the running and everything. You're on your feet all day long.
Yeah, you have to run everywhere that you go.
Yeah. And my arches fell and they hurt so bad. And I should have gone to the doctor. They were swollen. I could barely walk, but I was still made to run and do all of the chores that we had to do. Never went to the doctor about it. So now I have flat feet. But
I wonder if that's why I have flat feet.
maybe.
We both have flat feet. I wonder, we should talk to what's a foot doctor?
Podiatrist?
Yeah. I thought it was maybe something you were born with, but what you're saying is making a lot of sense.
Yeah, arches fell, and it was very painful.
Do you remember how long you were in boot camp?
About 3 to 4 months. And seeing that I had a background in work, I made bosun.
Yeah, and explain what bosun is.
Bosun, like you're on a ship, is the person who is in charge of the estates project force people. You takes down statistics and you check on their work and you make sure everybody's present and accounted for at musters. And it was a really neat responsibility. That was actually a joy for me because it was unexpected, completely unexpected. It wasn't expected. I was 14. I was just a child, nobody.
And there were adults in the boot camp.
Plenty adults, yeah. Yeah, that could have been bosun too, but I guess I was such a good worker.
Yeah, because you've been working full time since you were 11 in the family business back in Hawaii.
Yep.
It was sometimes, this is kind of a question I get often about Scientology, which is how growing up in Scientology, a lot of people don't understand. We're not going to get too much into this now, but why people stay or why you put up with some of the abuses and craziness that goes on. It's a slow boil, but when it starts to bubble, it stays at a boil, I think is how I would describe it. So when you're kind of, growing up, we were indoctrinated to believe that our value as people, as children, was based on what we could do, what we could produce.
Yeah, what could we contribute to the group that was the best for the group?
Exactly.
Not for you.
All about the group. And L. Ron Hubbard teaches there's a Scientology doctrine where he says, and this is used often, it was used in our family and it's used a ton in Scientology. And L. Ron Hubbard says, and I think it is an exact quote, "We rather have you dead than incapable." So from a very young age, we were indoctrinated to believe that if we could not be capable, live up to these expectations, do work well beyond our years, keep schedules we should not have been keeping as children, basically not be children, but be adults, that we needed to be able to do it and do it with competence.
Yeah.
And that's a theme in the Sea organization. They have, what is their saying? It's many are called, few are chosen.
Yeah.
And so it really, when you're a young person, you really have this young person in Scientology, you're indoctrinated with a sense of duty is not a bad thing in and of itself. But when it replaces your childhood, when it replaces relationships like familial relationships and bonding, and it might have been different for you, but growing up, I don't remember a lot of physical contact.
Nope.
In terms of hugs or things like that. I always would tease Lana because I always said she was the favorite. So I always just assumed she was getting all the affection.
Little did you know.
Yeah, there was really not a lot of that because we were seeing more. It didn't feel as much like a family as it did like a corporation. Or
Yeah, we worked with our aunts, our aunties and our cousins and our grandpa dad and our mother. We worked all the time, and
Yeah, we didn't do extracurricular activities. I did a little bit of track in high school, and I remember having to drop out of that because I needed to work. And that was a bummer. So there wasn't a lot of childhood going on, really being able to be kids when we were growing up. But because of this, we made good Sea Organization members.
Yep.
And that's why they often would recruit the youngest children of Scientologists that they could, because they knew that we were already being indoctrinated into this way of living, working, and seeing the world.
Yep.
So when you finally graduated, now to finish the Estates Project Force, which is boot camp for Sea Organization members, yours took, you said, 3 or 4 months. There are some people who are on it for several months.
Yes, there are a lot of those. And, me being 14, probably, kind of illiterate, seeing that I was out of school. There was no school in the Sea Org, too.
Yeah, none of these underage kids were going to school.
Yeah, and, it was just what you could contribute to the workforce.
Yeah, to the cause.
Yeah. You had to make money.
Well, yeah, if you were selling things in Scientology and that was your job, you didn't get paid anything. You got, during my day in the Sea Organization, I think we were getting $40 a week, $40 or $50. When you were getting paid.
Yeah, when you were getting paid. And if you weren't, on the EPF, maybe I don't recall getting paid, but maybe it was $15 here and there.
Yeah, when you were on the Estates Project Force, which again, the boot camp, I think you got half pay is what it was. So people would get like $15, $30. It was probably 15 because I think it was between 30 and 40 back in our day in the 80s.
Yeah, I think ours was $30 a week if you were a full-blown Sea Org member.
Yeah. So you graduate the Estates Project Force. You're still 14. What happens then?
So I never make it to CMU because
and that's the Central Marketing Unit, which is a Sea Organization
that oversaw marketing.
Yes,
for the whole global Scientology.
You started though. Which organization did you start at?
So then I got recruited for CMO PAC,
which is the Commodore's Messenger Organization, referred to a lot as the CMO, and PAC is the Pacific. It's California, it's LA, it's where we were. So the Commodore's Messenger Organization for the Pacific area. And to be in the CMO, there are specific qualifications different from other Sea Org positions. Like you couldn't ever have and this is why they were mostly children. You were a messenger. You were considered a messenger when you were in this organization for L. Ron Hubbard. And if anyone has studied or watched things on Scientology about the Sea Organization, you learned that he had these young kids, L. Ron Hubbard, who would take his orders and go get them enforced and executed. Didn't matter if the people that they were bossing around were adults. This was their job. You had to call them sir. Even women in the Sea Organization were referred to as sir if you were senior to someone else. The Sea Organization was modeled after the military, the Navy. L. Ron Hubbard had been in the Navy. So a lot of that carried over into how the Sea Organization was run and what it was like. We had roll call. Actually, I would argue it definitely was more strict than the military because it was massively abusive. Roll calls, you had to be at roll call, 3-4 times a day. This was kind of like a normal thing for Sea Organization members. You're lucky if you got 30 minutes for lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a thing. So you go into the Commodore's Messenger Organization. You're a fresh Sea Organization member. And I remember because I think your hair was short then and you got your uniform. And technically I would have had to have called you sir because you were senior to me. But at a point, you went up to the international base. And in Scientology, in the Sea Organization, everybody knows where it is now. It's in Hemet. Golden Era Productions is there. But at this time, if you were a Scientologist or a Sea Organization member, you did not know where the international management base was.
Yes, huge secret. Everybody knew where it was except for Scientologists.
That's so true. They had a giant sign out. So you never knew there was kind of like there would be, well, people would drive back and forth, but there would be a van that would kind of regularly go and take people. And when you first go, you're not told how long it's going to take. You're not told where it is. So you're recruited up to go into international management to the Commodore's Messenger Organization International, otherwise known as CMO Int. That is then where you headed. Were you
Correct.
About 15 by then?
I think I must have been about 15.
Freshly 15.
Yeah, freshly 15.
So you're on the secretive base. What was that like?
It was really nice.
Physically nice.
Physically nice. Lots of trees, small roads, everything was walkable. A spread out base, not like huge buildings like LA or anything.
Sure.
It was like bunkers and things. But it was really somber when I went because it wasn't that long after L. Ron Hubbard had died. And David Miscavige had taken over the church.
Yeah. Now, they weren't somber because L. Ron Hubbard died.
No.
I kind of want to clarify that point because in Scientology, especially in the C organization, you are not allowed to show what they call misemotion, negative emotions. Cry, be upset, sad. For some reason, you can be super pissed off and scream at people as long as they are junior to you. But you're not allowed to express those type of emotions. So the somberness was coming from people being like, this is horrible.
Yeah, everybody was having a really bad time. David Miscavige was a tyrant and getting down on everybody. Golden Era Productions, I think, was in the state of emergency at the time. So everybody was like, head down. Nobody befriended me. It was quiet. And quiet in the sense that, DM had a motorcycle.
Yeah, and DM is what people call David Miscavige.
Yeah, he had a motorcycle, and it was very loud, and you could hear him start it and roll down the hill to, different parts of the base, and people would get really scared and anxious, when that happened. And
because this man was and is abusive to his staff, and all you have to do is a quick Google of Scientology and David Miscavige, and you will find and understand the abuses that occurred in Scientology at the top levels of the C organization. When you were there, were you ever around David Miscavige?
Not in the same office or anything, but I did see him around. He would be in the cafeteria, talking to staff. A few times he would be yelling at staff, particularly Gold staff.
Golden Era Productions.
Yeah, right.
They created the videos and the cassette tapes back then, and then became DVDs of all of L. Ron Hubbard's materials.
Yes. And he'd yell. He'd yell right in people's faces, spitting, all red-faced, with his IGs right behind him, you know.
And those are inspector generals. At this time, there was an inspector general, which would have been like the head honcho over different branches of Scientology. If you think of it like what is it in the military? It's like the chief of staff. I don't know. Anyways, they were each over these different parts of Scientology. That went away fairly quickly when David Miscavige, not long after, went full dictator and started getting rid of people. And so you were kind of there around the beginning of that.
Yep, just the beginning. I should also mention, I did have one friend.
That's right.
I had one friend in the world at CMO Int, and her name was Roanne Hubbard, and she was about 12, and we had a blast together. She was allowed to do a lot of things that regular Sea Org members weren't allowed to do, like go into spaces and trespass, basically.
Yeah.
And were she took me up to the rafters of this warehouse where they were using for movie props.
And we should clarify too. Roanne Hubbard was L. Ron Hubbard's granddaughter.
Correct.
Who was born and raised, and at this time she was only 12, at the international base.
Yep. And we were up in the rafters one time, and DM came with his IGs into the building.
Yeah. So David Miscavige and his head guys.
Yep. It was Marty Rathburn, Mike Rinder, and I forget the guy's other name. I'll think of it in a minute. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they're talking about projects or whatever. I couldn't even really hear them, but I was terrified because if they looked up, there we were. Mm-hmm. And Roanne is starting to laugh and crack up so bad that she had to cover her mouth. And,
because she's not going to get in trouble.
Oh, no.
Because she got special treatment as L. Ron Hubbard's granddaughter.
Yep.
But here you are, a regular Sea Org member.
Sea Org member, brand new to the base. And, of course, I knew I would be getting the blame for going up in the rafters like that. But she laughed and laughed, and finally they left. Mm-hmm. And, boy, that was, I dodged a bullet. But yeah, she was really fun. I miss her terribly. And we had a lot of fun together. Somebody actually wrote a KR on me.
Yeah, and that's a knowledge report. So in Scientology, if someone violates the group policy, L. Ron Hubbard's policy or rules, they write what's called a knowledge report on you. They basically rat on you. It's a huge part of the Scientology culture, and you're indoctrinated to believe that you're reporting on these people for their own good,
right?
For their own spiritual freedom. But really, it's used as a weapon to intimidate, to cause problems, and to rat on each other. And it creates this atmosphere of no true connection. No real community, because you don't know if you say something that sounds even the slightest like you're unhappy in this organization, you will be written up. And then you will have to undergo reprogramming, re-indoctrination. So you really don't open up to a lot of people. So you got a knowledge report written on you for what?
It said that Roanne has been very serious since the new girl came around, in so many words. And, I noticed they'd walk together and just be very serious, and Roanne isn't laughing and playing and
which is so
visiting.
ironic, because it's an outpoint that this child is not laughing and playing, yet every single other child in Scientology, in the Sea organization, if you're laughing and playing, you're out ethics.
Totally.
You're doing wrong. You need to be corrected. You need to be handled. But for her, it was different.
Yep.
And and I'm happy for her for that, because that's, I mean, today she's got to be, well, let's see, we're in our early 50s, so she's got to be in her
late 40s.
Yeah. At least, hopefully, her childhood was somewhat a little bit more normal.
Yeah, I think they tried to. She had homeschool. And
meanwhile, no one else is going to school. You weren't going to school.
No, she didn't have to work all the crazy hours that the rest of us did either.
Yeah.
And
I think she's out now.
I hope so.
I had heard some years ago that she was out. I don't know where she is, but wish her well, and hope she's finding healing and peace.
If you're out there, Roanne, I love you. I miss you so terribly. And I hope you reach out.
Yeah, Look for Lana. You can find me easier, and I'll connect you with Lana.
Yeah.
So you get this knowledge report written on you because...
Well, we were talking about serious things, for kids. We were contemplating, serious things sometimes. And that's all. That's all we were doing.
Nothing to it. So what happened as a result of that report being written?
Well... I had shortly after that been sent back to the PAC base.
Mm-hmm. And this is in L.A., back to L.A.
Yeah, back to L.A. I got into a little bit of trouble. I had there was nobody there for me. There was nobody to show you around. There was nobody to
And remember, she's only
guide
15
you.
years old.
Yeah, and everyone is living in fear, and I was very alone and scared, and had nobody except for Roanne. So I did get into a little bit of a trouble when I was there. I did some naughty things, so I wasn't allowed back.
She was what's referred to as busted off the base, busted off of the international base, because if you step out of line, you pretty much get sent down back to LA, back to Hollywood, where there's more Scientology management, because you are unworthy at that point, which I would say there's more people who are probably busted out of there than who stay. Now, what I want to do, because I don't even know how much time we're into this. I want to get more into what happened after that. And when we do another episode, I'm going to share as well how I joined the Sea Organization and the kind of Sea Organization member that I was. And it might really surprise you when you find out how that went down. And I think hopefully Lana's going to join us again.
Sure.
So thank you so much for listening. This is part 4 of my Scientology story, and sharing this, it helps me process it. It helps Lana. It helps you process it as well. We've talked about this. It's funny because when I first started talking about this on the podcast, and Tonka Talk is not a podcast about Scientology. It's about the ways people find community and connection. But my story in Scientology, my experience, has everything to do with my obsession with community and connection today. So I've decided, I think I'm finally ready to talk about it more and process what happened. Interestingly, at the same time, Lana started a therapy where she's doing the same thing. And so we thought, well, hell, why don't we both talk about it then? And a lot of these things you and I have never talked about.
Yeah, not really.
We've not really gotten into it. And so I hope that you join us. You can reach me at natalie@tonkatalk.com. Thank you so much for the emails and the support and the kind words. It's a lot to process. If you have any questions, please email me and ask. And that goes for my family too. At a recent holiday event, I realized that my son, who's 25, there's some things that I hadn't told him about the family that he heard on part 3. So I need to remember to update the family, but please do reach out. I'm doing my best to share this story and share with you what that experience was, which again helps us process it so much. So Lana, we will chat again.
Yes.
Everybody else, I will talk to you later.